crypto debate, part 2. This is gonna be fun. What's going on? Yeah, we got a little afternoon surprise. We got an afternoon surprise for you here, folks. I'm about to have crypto debate part 2 with Otto. You guys may have seen him before on my last live that I did together. We're gonna do it again.
Yo.
We are back.
We're back. I love how you said it. It's an afternoon surprise. I'm like, oh, this is an afternoon delight.
It is
crypto.
It most certainly is, dude. It most certainly is. How are things, man? What's the latest?
I'm doing great. I'm actually just hyper focused on creating this course. I just bought myself a new mic, as you can see here in front of me. Hello. It's not connected to this, but just trying to make it professional, as professional as I can, because I've had so many people ask me about this course that I'm like, I need to step up my game and up level the way it looks, the way it feels, everything, and deliver a solid product.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I had a microphone that was here before, and I was hearing it, and it was sounding kind of tinny, and I'm like, I have to spend $200 to get like a decent mic. And even that is not $1,000 mic. There's ones that are thousands of dollars.
Yeah, once you start getting studio levels, but then you have to have the right space, because if you're gonna spend that much on the mic and you're like in your garage with cars driving by, then it's not gonna help you.
No, that's a very, very good point. My the real estate in Fort Lauderdale is a little bit on the pricier side, so I may be relegated to the crib for a while.
But yeah, it's always good to utilize and invest in yourself, and I've always said, when you invest in yourself, nobody can take that away from you. And so these little things here and there to make something solid, I think was a good move forward to up level.
Absolutely. So let's jam on crypto. The reason that I wanted to talk about it is because I feel like it's something that I've been thinking about lately. Number one, and number two, I think that it's kind of like in the mainstream discussion. So I think that there'd be value to be seen on both sides of it. Also, it kind of like gets people a little hot, which I think is kind of fun. Like people go nuts in the comments, and they're just like, oh, they freak out, and like I get angry DMs. It's just like a fun time.
And just by the way, guys, I said let's talk about aliens, and he's like, "No, we'll do crypto." I'm like, all right.
Yeah. See, I'm good on the aliens, and I think that that's a great thing. But at the same time, it's like I haven't done enough research on the topic to be anything other than like, yeah, that could definitely be real, and they're in the ocean, but like they're definitely in the ocean, but whatever.
I like that response. You're right. Yeah, there's like until there's like something happening, it's just speculation at that point.
I think that it is highly probable and almost a certainty that they're here, they exist among us, and we'll never know, or they don't want us to know, or they love that we speculated on it. Or I think that in the event that there are aliens, I would assume that not all aliens are the same, in the same sense that they're not all evil, they're not all good. And they're probably fighting much like Men in Black, where there's like good ones here and bad ones here, and they're fighting amongst themselves while we fight amongst ourselves. And it's just this constant duality, this yin and yang of existence, where some of them want us to win and some of us don't.
I get that. That makes sense, like having that duality on many levels, right? And it just, no matter what level you're on, you're having that clash.
Yeah. And then Juke says aliens use crypto to pay for gas to fill up their UFO.
Probably.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is. It could be a few aliens like, hey, let's help him out.
It's probably a shape-shifting reptilian that like worked at the Clinton initiative or whatever. He's on the inside.
Yeah, I can see that.
So I want to preface my position, which I think I maybe made clear before, but it doesn't always hurt to reiterate, is that my general disposition to cryptocurrency in general is that blockchain is highly valuable. And when you're buying cryptocurrency, you're not buying blockchain. You're not investing in blockchain. You're investing in things that utilize blockchain. So you're not actually buying blockchain. But I do believe that blockchain is valuable. I think that the technology is very fun and very cool. I think that some cryptocurrencies will succeed. I certainly don't think all of them will. I think the vast majority of them won't. And by won't, I mean we'll never reach a critical mass consistently over a long period of time where they retain value over the long term. They'll come and go. New ones will come in, new ones will come out. But there'll be very few that just sustain all the way through, permanently. And I think that in the event that someone invests in them, you can make money. You might make money. You certainly can lose. And as long as most people are in the understanding that they're essentially gambling or buying high-risk assets or whatever you want to call them, it's like high-risk gambling. And as long as you're prepared to lose it, I'm for it. If that's what you want to do, like, rock out. My only thing is I try to tell people to, it's like, if you're investing in it as a store of value, if you're investing in it as a long-term to protect yourself down the line, it's just, I believe that there are better investments long-term. Now, is that not something that you can make money in for the short term or right now? Absolutely, you totally could. And of course, naturally, all of us kind of kick ourselves that are just like, oh, I should have bought this or that. I had like 58 Ethereum like 5 years ago that I bought for between like $50 and $250 a coin. So I would have made six figures on it had I not bombed out of it. And I certainly kick myself for that. But at the same time, it's like what I did with that money was invested into businesses, other investments, other assets that I have. And like those have all done well as well. They haven't gone up 10,000%, but they're all doing okay.
Yeah, there's actually and I didn't know this information. I had to actually look it up to make sure it was real. The creator of Doge, which by the way, Doge was like this like meme coin that they created just for fun. It was actually to mock the idea of Bitcoin. I mean, it was really like the antithesis, right? The opposite.
Yeah.
He sold, I think he had at that time like 30% or 40% that was of Doge himself.
Yep.
And he sold it to buy a car at that time. Which you think, you create something out of thin air and then it gains traction, it gains value. You're like, oh, I can buy a car with what I have. Great. But like you see where it's at now. I think it's, we're still so new, even after a decade of being in this industry, still so new that you don't know what direction is going to go. We're still innovating. We're still building on top of the idea of blockchain and that technology, that innovation. And so you're right. There's so many areas that this thing can disrupt, so many industries that it can disrupt. We just don't know where the money is going to, consolidate to in the long term to sustain that specific project. And it can flow out of it very quickly. That's the other thing. Yeah. Compared to real markets, it's not, there's a process. It takes a second to move billions of dollars from one thing to the other. In crypto, is instant.
Right. Well, something that I feel like is one of those things that I suppose you could say the wisdom of aging gives us is being able to see commonalities and patterns between certain things throughout our life. It's like you meet a certain type of guy that acts a certain type of way and you're like, I remember this guy that used to do something like that. Like I can almost predict what this guy's going to do next. Or like a girl, it's like you go on a date with like this girl like does the same thing that this other girl did. Like these are commonalities. I know what I need to look out to avoid or to go towards. And the greatest commonality that I see with cryptocurrency is domain names. So in the early 2000s, I invested in a bunch of domain names, and I was convinced that like it was domain names to the moon. I'm an internet person. I made sense of it. Tons of guys had already made a ton of money, millions of $10 million, whatever. People were doing what is called parking domains. So you would buy baseball.com, you would put a bunch of ads on it and you would park it. And then people just type in baseball.com, click on the ads because they didn't know any better. And these guys were making sometimes to the tune of $50,000 a day. I know a guy that was literally making like $50,000 a day. And that's like real cash out money. That's not just like appreciation. And then the domain was increasing in value as well. And it reminds me so much of what's happening right now in cryptocurrency because it seemed like such a foregone conclusion. And here we are, all these internet nerds in on the ground level. It's just us. It's like me and a bunch of other like old fat dudes, and we're all just chilling in a room talking about computers and nerding out, you know? And like some guys are stacked to the gills. That guy's got 10,000 domain names. That guy's got 5,000 domain names. That guy sold one for 8 million. And it was like this hype, right? And everybody wanted to get in. And what they were saying along the way was like, these type-in domain names are like the oil lifeblood of the internet. And people are just going to go for now until forever, and they're going to type in computerscreen.com or cellphone.com or whatever the term was, and it's going to be valuable forever simply because of that reason. And over the course of my experience in the domain industry, what I realized is as everybody held and didn't produce output, they held for this ultimate day where they would cash out with this and they'd be swimming in gold bars. I realized that the marketplace changed to evolve around these non-productive actions. And what happened is like Chrome comes out and the search bar and the URL bar is now a search bar and not a URL bar. So nobody goes to baseball.com, they just type in baseball, it sends them to a Google search, they go to ilovebaseball.net and it doesn't matter. And then on top of .com, .net, .org, .us, which was the industry standards for top level domain names, or also known as TLDs. One day they released whatever you want. .legal, .word, .global, .vip, .club, .biz, .everything, right? And just like that, this small, finite, you know, there's only 999 .com domain names that are numbers, 333, 777, 444, whatever. There's only 999 of them. When it comes to letters, A, B, C, F, G, same thing. There's like only a few hundred of them, a few hundred combinations. When you go up to 4 letters, 5 letters, and .com is like the gold standard. It's the Bitcoin of domain names, right? As time went on, the domain name lowered in value. All of these other ones opened up to this entire brand new world. Whatever. Instead of having homerental.com, you had Airbnb or Google or a word that means nothing. And just like that, the marketplace shifted to create a new angle where somebody could accomplish the same task, circumventing all these people that were holding out for this eventual payday. And I think that what's going to happen with cryptocurrency is very much the same, where Bitcoin is going to lose its cachet when people realize that Dogecoin is easier, cheaper to transact, or the next coin is easier, cheaper to transact. None of them are going to truly be a store of value or an actual currency. Like I go to the store and I buy a cheeseburger with X coin. They're all going to be equated into some fiat currency all the way through until, or at the very least, some digital Fed coin, which I think is going to come down the pipe. And all of these things are going to expand, and the vast majority of them are going to lose their value overnight. And the only ones that will retain value are ones that allow other processes to be built on top of them that help other things happen better, like credit card processing faster or some other thing. But I do think that Bitcoin will be next to zero, and I think that the vast majority of coins will be worth almost nothing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that, which, by the way, that analogy of .com, that was great. I think that's a great comparison, you know, to get a grasp on how the markets are moving now and how there really are, you know, we're at that point where somebody figured out that you can change the .com to anything. That's where we're at in crypto now. And it's really, it's shifting a lot of things around in the marketplace. You're getting in the top 20 of the list in market caps. We're getting those top 20 being switched constantly now, which has never really happened. It's been very stable. At least the top 10 has been very stable for you know, I'd say 3 years or so, 3 or 4 years. So now we're getting this like they're just shifting, you know, dynamically almost.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because as we move forward, as we innovate, we are having to have the innovation be a little broader. I think what happened because of the ICO boom, like that time that we had a lot of new companies pop up out of nowhere, and all they had was like a white paper, a pretty website, and, you know, an idea. People were they were really trying to fine tune. They were trying to like create very specific businesses. Recently, though, I've noticed that most companies, most projects that are being successful and have finished the product, have finished the idea, are the ones that are more general. They're a little more horizontal than up and down. They're not as specific. They're more like, hey, come on this platform and build whatever idea you have. You know, like Ethereum. Ethereum was one of the first ones to shift towards that. Instead of being the product, they're like, no, come build your product on this thing.
Yep.
So yeah, Bitcoin is the product, right? And compared to everything that exists, literally everything that exists after it, there are so much better options. So much better options. I guess the question is now is there enough people in the world that have an emotional attachment, right, to the specific crypto? Because I've also learned this in the crypto space, that if you get enough people to believe in that specific project, if you get enough people to support it, to use it, to adopt it, it'll be worth something. That's actually part of the variables. Whenever I look at variables to invest into a project, one of the variables is community. How strong is that community? Because unlike regular markets where you have a board, you have like people that work in the business, you have like all these things that bring value to that, which those are also part of the crypto projects. One thing that most businesses don't care for is what's my community, or you know, I mean, they want to have people that are buying their product, but they, you know, that's the money flow. That's part of the financial aspect of it. So in crypto, if you have like Dogecoin, for example, somebody just posted that, you have enough people, you know, being brainwashed really to throw their emotions into a project and disregard all the other stuff, because you can't, there's, like I said, 5 variables. If you only focus on the community and you forget all the other stuff, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, there's so many things that you have to look at to make sure that you're in a project that's solid. So yeah, I have to take that into account. You know, because that's going to help whatever project get that momentum and get the support where it can be worth something. So Bitcoin is in that moment now that, okay, if you have enough people, because it has tested, you know, it's been tried and tested in the last decade through several different areas of, you know, trying to destroy it through mining power, trying to centralize the wallets, enough Bitcoin into one wallet. I mean, there's been a lot of things that it's gone through, and it's proven itself. I think the question now is there enough newer projects that can get that same momentum, same backing, same support, same marketing that Bitcoin naturally got, that then people will go, oh, you know, let's stop using this old thing and go into this new project and put all the money in there. So
that perspective is very much like a human perspective. So what do you say to the, like, I mean a human perspective, like a retail perspective, like your average everyday user. Mm-hmm. What do you think about, so I posted a screenshot earlier today of, I believe it was Iran that outlawed cryptocurrency mining because of all the power that it was using, because they were getting widespread blackouts because people were mining cryptocurrency. So considering that we know that the next lockdown, the next corona clap, the next clamdemic, the next whatever is going to be global warming, climate change. We know that that's what's going to happen. Do you believe that represents a significant risk? Because we know that, and I'm sure you know this, if everybody in the world used Bitcoin, there wouldn't be enough power in the world to mine all the Bitcoins to use it as an actual currency. We would run out of power. It would consume more power than the world produces just to run everybody using Bitcoin if it was actually used as money. So if all of this cryptocurrency mining is using up all this power and everybody's on this global warming kick, do you believe that poses a significant threat where someone like a Krusty Harris, President Krusty, could come out and say, this is global warming, aside from a whole other litany of problems that they could use? This is being used in the mafia. This is being used to extort people. This is being used to hide funds. This is being used to avoid taxes. This is being used to any variety of things that they're going to say. But one of them being the climate effect and how much power it takes to mine all these cryptocurrencies. Do you think that, do you believe that that poses a kind of like an existential threat to cryptocurrency's existence just in and of itself as well?
I mean, that's definitely been debated for a while. I've heard this debate 3 years ago, 4 years ago. So it's not a new one. And I don't know the exact numbers. I was trying to pull it up here. I saw this meme that actually broke it all down. But the amount of power that is used for mining crypto, Bitcoin even specifically, is not that much in comparison to what we do in the environment with all these other things. Like I said, I don't know the exact numbers, but based on everything that I've researched and learned through the process, when you compare the way that the monetary system works and how, when you take everything into account that makes that monetary system function, it's way more electricity usage for that than this decentralized, because you're using distributed electricity. It's not just in one location. You have global, right? You have hundreds of countries supporting that network and offering usage for that network. So it's not, and also a lot of them are using, it's like solar farms, they're using hydropower. They try to do the green way if they can.
Well, because this is the thing, is that right now it's like I'm looking at a study, it's in BBC from the University of Cambridge, where it says that presently, right now, and the vast majority of people, pretty much a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent, are using Bitcoin in like day-to-day transactions, like a cup of coffee. And right now, Bitcoin uses more energy than the entire country of Argentina just by itself. So what I'm saying is that if it was to reach this widespread, everybody uses it as money, and or it's a store of value, and or it's part of an everyday transaction, and every person on earth holds, mines, or at the very least transacts in Bitcoin or holds some wealth in Bitcoin. If right now it uses more power than the country of Argentina, and it says here it uses 120 terawatt hours in a year, France uses 449 terawatt hours in a year, so you're only talking 3-4 times as much for the entire country of France. So if everybody was using Bitcoin, which I would say the amount of people that hold Bitcoin on the entire planet is probably like 2%, maybe 3% of the planet, right? So if 3% of the planet uses more power than Argentina, then like imagine if 30% of the planet was using Bitcoin. It's like, how could we sustain it? I don't know that the numbers match up. So are you saying that it doesn't use that much power?
I mean, so there's two levels to this. First of all, because it's been around, this argument has been around for a while. They've already created, so many different types of crypto that don't use that much power, that only use CPU power. And so you go from proof of work to proof of stake, it's called. So proof of work is you have to have the GPUs, you have to have the actual processing power, and that's what creates that sucking in of electricity. You're having to the actual miners themselves get hot, and then you have to also pay for the ventilation, for air conditioning, all that stuff. So that's proof of work. They've already shifted to proof of stake on many levels. Ethereum is actually in reaction to the climate conversation, just trying to be politically correct. They're like, oh, we got to upgrade to Ethereum 2.0, which is just proof of stake. And then it changes everything completely. You don't have to have miners anymore. You just have to have master nodes around the world that will, facilitate those transactions. And the nodes can be just like a CPU. So that's a great point. That that is a thing that they're looking at. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, don't you think so? Just to specifically narrow in on one, I think that type of reaction and that type of adjustment can only be handled by a company that manages this structure and thus renders Bitcoin useless.
What do you mean? The decision to do that, you mean?
As technology evolves and there is no authority over Bitcoin to make these types of adjustments, Bitcoin evaporates because
then it becomes a consensus issue, right? Because you have to have at least 51% of the network come into agreement to make that shift, to make that change. And so that's actually another reason why Bitcoin, I believe, came to be worth what it's worth, because they tried that already. They tried that at least 5 years ago. I remember the first time I remember hearing about them trying to create consensus, because they ran into a bunch of issues. They ran into scalability issues. They ran into the cost issue. They knew that was coming. They knew that it was coming to this point now where, it was going to be a little difficult to use it as currency. Because I agree with you, Bitcoin as currency, dead in the water. Stop it right now. It sucks. It sucks. It takes anywhere between, depending on how much you pay, and it can fluctuate in that moment, anywhere between 10 minutes to a couple hours even. So compared to like Doge is instant. It's almost, it's literally instant. So they knew all this was coming. So they tried to create a consensus back then. They tried to have people come together to come to an agreement, and it never worked. It never worked. And so it just what people did, instead of creating a consensus, they would do this thing called a hard fork. And so a hard fork is they just copy the code, change it a little bit, and then literally create a copy and paste of that thing, but a little bit better. So you do have newer versions. You have like Bitcoin Cash, you have Bitcoin Diamond, you have Bitcoin currency, I think one is called, or fiat. Bitcoin fiat. Yeah, so people have done, they're trying to play on the brand, right? They want to have that brand name associated, because when people go and search for it, like you mentioned, they'll pop up. So this goes back to the beginning of the conversation. Will it last forever? That's a good question. It depends on those variables. Are there enough maximalists? We call them Bitcoin maximalists, because we've had this discussion over the years in the crypto space, where it's like, why do these Bitcoin people keep, we've shifted away from that so long ago. Why are there these devout people behind Bitcoin? And that was always the question. And so it really is like, will that just, and that's why we call it the gold standard, because it keeps sticking around. It keeps, everything is traded against it. One of the things that I mentioned is that because it was first, when the countries came in to regulate it, instead of writing, and it's all about legalese. It's all about how you write it down. So when they were starting to regulate crypto, right, the idea of the crypto industry, the space, blockchain, they wrote down Bitcoin. And so what happens with that? Well, the one that's regulated is Bitcoin, not Litecoin, not Ethereum, not every single other crypto that exists after Bitcoin. It's Bitcoin. So that created a technicality. It created this issue where, like, when the exchanges came in and they wanted to create a trading market, they had to trade against Bitcoin first, because that was the one that was regulated against fiat. So, and then for a long time, if you wanted to buy Ethereum, you had to get your cash, buy Bitcoin, and then buy Ethereum. So that was a whole other variable why it stuck around. People were just like, they were obligated to use it on their platforms to do trading. They couldn't go directly to fiat. So yeah, I agree. It's not a good form of. It's not a good version of where we're at now, and then the sustainability of it being worth something in the long run. And it can definitely explode. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing too that I just feel like is, aside from all these other issues, which is the fact that it can be duplicated and forked in 50,000 directions, the fact that there are ones that are centrally managed by companies like Ethereum, for example, that can adjust and make them better without a consensus. They can just make it better, or in theory, make it worse.
Well, that's so there's a portion of it that they can do that, but it's a surface level. It's not the hard code inside the mechanism.
Okay.
It's like the smart contract level of that. They can do modifications, but everybody can visually see that. But you're right. There are a lot of copies that are more centralized, and that's why it takes like discernment to really figure out which ones are the benevolent ones and which ones are the bad ones.
Yeah, and I just think that, like, aside from all of it, aside from all of the inherent like risks from just a retail perspective, which one is valuable, which company is doing the best one, which one's the fastest, whatever it is, the kind of the elephant in the room is just they can be evaporated by purely governments agreeing to not allow it. And to me, I think that that's the greatest threat of all, is that at any moment, if they say Coinbase cannot turn USD into anything, or you can't turn it, or you can't bring money in or out of Coinbase without there being extensive tax documents, or whatever the exchanges are, or putting FINRA regulations on all of these different things to prevent money laundering and a variety of other things. And I feel like those, in theory, kind of evaporate the purpose of it in the first place. It's like having it decentralized, having it not tied to the dollar, or having it not regulated by a government, or having it not be traceable, are kind of like all of the use cases that bring it the most value, other than it just being like a game or a lottery or whatever you want to call it. But at any moment, the Federal Reserve Bank could say, we're not going to allow USD to be transferred into these types of currencies, or we're not going to allow them to be converted out, in which case you're kind of stuck in the ecosystem unless somebody prices it. And like, so like I just saw that the world's largest cryptocurrency conference is going to be in Miami, like later this year.
Yeah,
and
June 6th, I think.
And I was just thinking to myself, I wonder if they're going to sell tickets in cryptocurrency, because if they do, that would pose a significant risk to their bottom dollar, because that cryptocurrency could go down. And if they're selling tickets or vendors, so it's almost like if they don't, then it's like,
no, they do.
Okay.
They do. Every conference I've been to 20 plus conferences. I've never bought a ticket if not with crypto.
Okay.
And that's actually, where I would want to go with that. Every country is going to try to regulate it. I mean, that's inevitable. That's not an if scenario. That's a definite. It's going to happen.
Exactly.
And people look at that as a negative. I look at it as a positive. I look at it as like, we can't beat them. We got to join them. We got to regulate this to make sure that it's being used properly. It's being used, in the right way. Why? 2 reasons. They've tried to stop it. I experienced that firsthand. In 2017, China, every single month was banning Bitcoin. And then within 30 days would say, well, maybe we can do this way. And then you could see the market like fluctuate with that news and those rumors. The U.S. tried for many years to stop it and to regulate it and to bring scrutiny to that. And so what I've noticed is that it's hard. You have to think, okay, you have to ask that question. Why do I need to go to fiat, right? First of all, why do you need to go to fiat? What in your personal life, why do I need cash, right? That's the first question you got to ask. Then we got to use the resources. We got to use the internet that we have in front of us and see if there are options that don't require cash, that don't require that payment through cash. And there is, if you search. I mean, I can tell you right now, the only reason I have a bank account is to pay for my rent. And that's only because my landlord, I'm still talking to him, try to get him on board with crypto, and I can send him some Ethereum and pay for my rent. But, I think in the last 5 years, there's over 6,000 plus different businesses, and they're fairly large businesses that are doing transactions for us that will facilitate our lives in many ways. Even like local governments. I know there's a few states where you can pay your water bill, you can pay your electric bill. Here where I'm at, you can do that. So there are places you can live and survive purely on crypto. And, I guess it comes to that point where you have to decide, which system do you want to live in? You want to live in a system where you are governed by something that at any moment could come and just take it from you? Or do you want to take back responsibility, become your own bank, stay in control of your finances where nobody can take it from you? Because it's a physical thing on your device. And, on whether it's a USB device or your phone or your computer. And you're in control of that stuff, and now you have a path to do what you want without having to go to fiat. So it's like how easy or difficult do you want things to be in your life?
I guess the big question is, when you say they tried to, do you think that they couldn't just stop it completely?
They've tried to do that indirectly. I'll tell you an example. So
if it was a yes or no, do you think that let's just call it the U.S. government? If the U.S. government was to decide we're stopping this completely, do you think that they could stop it or no?
Practically, no, because
Okay.
you need There's over 1,000 teraflops of processing power just in Bitcoin alone. The supercomputer in Texas has 22 teraflops. You need at least 51% of that processing power to make a change or to stop that protocol, that specific Bitcoin protocol. So even if you were to put, I looked this up, even if you were to put all the supercomputers together to work together towards that goal of stopping it, it still wouldn't be enough.
Well, that's assuming that you need processing power in order to stop it. That's kind of like saying, like, for example, I don't think that the United States government could stop people from trafficking fentanyl and selling fentanyl. But if you make fentanyl highly illegal to possess, highly illegal to sell, you have strong borders. If you have increased technology that gives you a better ability to pick up on it when it's being moved, you're spending and investing more money in being an intermediary in between it, you can severely reduce its prevalence versus just like, how do you stop it? What I'm saying is that I think they can greatly devalue it to the point where they don't need to stop it. Kind of like stuff like, for example, like having strong borders where you can't move crystal meth over the border or whatever other thing. That's what I'm saying, is that I don't think that they need to stop it. They can just make it illegal, or they can just make it cost prohibitive. Or like if they were to just say, hey, everyone that has Bitcoin, no US based tax paying business is allowed to transfer money into cryptocurrency or accept payment in cryptocurrency, or they will lose their business license. And just like that, every business no longer accepts cryptocurrency. Like that. That's it. It's gone. You don't need to compute it. It's just you're out. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, then you go back to the Constitution. I mean, the 2020 proved to us that the Constitution is so important because of big government. The whole point of the Constitution is to protect us from big government. So if it gets to a point where there's laws that prohibit you from living your life in any way you want, which, by the way, crypto is because it's considered a property and commodity asset, that's a bartering system. Bartering system is the oldest form of making transactions. Like you go to a guy, back in the day, I have oranges, you have milk, I want to trade. And that's a barter. Which, by the way, it's funny because the IRS actually taxes that. Most people don't declare that. It is a taxable event. But, like I said, I have to go back to the Constitution. What laws exist that are prohibiting me from being sovereign? Because I think that's the issue that we've been indoctrinated with. We've been indoctrinated that power flows upwards and it goes to the central. I think we actually discussed this in our last conversation. That power flows to this federal government, the central power, and then like, if my streets aren't made here, if my road is messed up, it's the president's fault. And I think that what crypto is doing is at least giving us back that awareness first right now of having that sovereignty, of having options to barter, to make our, to have our function in our lives. Well,
okay. That's a very fair point. I like that point. However, it is in the Constitution that the U.S. government is the only institution that's able to mint and manage currency. So if it's
though?
Yeah.
Where is that at? It doesn't say that.
Yes.
Unless it's an amendment. Is it an amendment?
Let me. Yeah.
I think that's the issue. Yeah. So amendments, that's a whole other rabbit hole. Amendments are like a huge rabbit hole because since the 1800s, I think it was like 1872 or something like that, when the U.S. went bankrupt and it became the USA Corporation, these amendments started piling on to justify distorting the original Constitution. But please share.
So like in section, of course I don't go further into it, but it basically says in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution specifically gives power to Congress to borrow money, and also the power to coin money and regulate the value of both U.S. and foreign coins, regulate interstate commerce. So it's like Of course there's certainly a legal debate to be had, but in the event that this was being used as money, and it's like these and goods and services are priced in it, then like it would need to be taxed in order to be fair to all the other people that don't use it, which would put that intermediary in there. That I think that that's one of the things that I don't understand about the value of crypto. It's like if you had to give me a single reason as to why cryptocurrency is so valuable versus like the traditional banking system, I could understand the debate of like Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover are taking a spiff off the top. You're losing transaction fees. I'll buy on that one, sure. Um, International wires take a little bit more time. I'll bite on that one. A wire transfer has to happen during the day. I'll bite on that one. I think that those are all solvable things. I think that as the SWIFT system gets better and as banks continue to evolve, they could come up with ways to do that in a more expedient rate, which would essentially like take away the cryptocurrency value as it relates to the speed. I think that that is something that could happen over time and probably will. So what I'm wondering is like, what is the singular thing that makes cryptocurrency so desirable? And I think that what it was like you said, it's like it's taking this power back, which just kind of like in and of itself suggests that it's separated from our federal managed, in theory, evil, or whatever you want to call it, structure, and that this somehow gives us the power to be more autonomous, where in the event that it was to get regulated like that, it would lose that one thing that theoretically makes it the most valuable.
Oh, wait, say that last part again.
Like, like, if what I'm trying to say is, if there was one thing about crypto that makes it the most valuable thing, that you were like, if every other aspect of it was to be matched by traditional banking, what's the one thing that makes crypto better than fiat money? And what I'm assuming your answer would be, which is kind of what you suggested, and maybe I'm wrong, I'll let you answer it, is that it's this decentralized, separated from the structure thing that gives you your own power. And what I'm saying is that if they come in and regulate it and they move it just like money and it gets taxed and it gets FINRA and it gets all these other things, then isn't that one primary thing, like kind of like the home run hit, isn't that evaporated with just that?
Gotcha. Okay, so this is a two-parter. So yes, that is actually one of the decentralization, that self-governing aspect of it, where it does it all on its own. That's huge. I mean, just that alone is a big part of it, because there's nowhere you can easily go to and see all the reasons and variables of why the Federal Reserve prints more money. I mean, you have to really take it from several different sources. And even then it's distorted, it's manipulated for political reasons and whatnot. That's definitely a huge variable that I always tell people about. Now, the other huge part of this that I love to share is the mindset. So we've been born into this society of, we call it healthy capitalism, where there's competition, where, the one person needs to lose for me to win. There's this scarcity built into that mindset. Like there's not enough. I gotta take what's mine. And so what has happened in the industry, they've taken all of this mindset that we've been indoctrinated with, and they've hard coded it into these protocols. So so what does that mean? That means that let's go for Bitcoin again, for example. There's two really huge variables that are built into that protocol that create that natural scarcity, which then facilitates me to be more abundant with it and treat it with more abundance. So the first thing is that every 4 years, right? Every 4 years, Bitcoin gets cut in half. That means that all the people that are processing, that are, miners, that are offering up their processing power to mint out the new tokens, the new coins, I'll tell you the math. Every 10 minutes, it pumps out a certain amount of coins. Right now, we're at 6.25 Bitcoins every 10 minutes. So based on the mining power, based on the amount of people in the network, based on the time frame where we're at in the protocol, in the time, we're at 6.25. And I think it's a little less than 2 years now. That number every 10 minutes is gonna cut in half to 3.125. So naturally, right? Naturally, you have this deflationary aspect to it. That means that you cannot create more of it. You can't dilute the already circulating supply with way more of that same currency. So there's this deflationary aspect. That's huge.
But
That's never existed before.
But and that's great, but that still doesn't take into that's. I'm trying to think of a good analogy, but I can't think of one off the top of my head. But does the simple fact that that structure happening naturally and it being a first of its kind, whatever, which I'll admit is impressive, does that simply in and of itself make it valuable? Because there's all these other things that, like I said, it's like if they make it illegal to transact, it costs too much power. It's anti-Earth. You can make 50,000 versions of it. They can outlaw it in a moment's notice, and all these other things. It's like, even though that's real cool, it's just like I don't see how that makes it valuable. Even though that would be cool if that's how the Federal Reserve, for example, worked, and that would be amazing. But does that negate the threat of? Does that make it valuable in and of itself? Just the simple fact that it does that, I don't see how that makes it valuable.
I mean, think about when we say self-governing, when we say decentralized, when we say all these words that describe this thing.
Yeah.
Even if it was using the electricity of a country, of a little small country, compare it to how much energy and time and money and electricity is spent on the centralized banking system. Because the centralized banking system is not just the Federal Reserve. It's the Federal Reserve. It's the millions of banks that exist. How much electricity is each one of those banks costing? The trucks that it takes. No, you have to take those into account.
I don't know that there's millions of banks.
Even if it's 100,000 banks.
I don't even.
Whatever. We're talking global.
I don't think
it's not just the U.S.
Yeah, but a branch is not. I don't know that a branch is a bank. I think that a bank is a bank.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
a branch is a bank. That's a brick and mortar. It's wasting electricity. It's paying people money for their time and their energy. It creates jobs, sure. But
so
why do we,
those could go? I mean, there's a local Wells Fargo bank. There used to be 10 tellers. Now there's one teller. It could be a very short period of time before there's just an ATM and there is no bank branch. So then all that power goes away.
With crypto, you don't need any bank. You don't need any bank. You really don't.
Yes.
You don't need a Federal Reserve.
But you
still
don't
need the people.
But you still need the.
Well, watch. So let's keep going down the list of the centralized banking system. You don't need those the department that takes care of the budgeting to figure out how much money needs to be printed that year. You don't need the cars and the planes to help carry this the physical cash everywhere and all over the place, and so they're wasting all that cost in gas and oil. So it eliminates. There's a lot of layers. And then we're just talking about Bitcoin too, by the way. Bitcoin disrupts all of that by itself. But it still doesn't.
All of those things that you're talking about could be minimized, and I would believe are being minimized at a rapid clip right now. I'll bet you considerably less paper currency is moved now than even 1 year ago. I would bet considerably less energy is wasted on branches and other things, and that's going to continue to decrease. Whereas the amount of power that it takes to power the Bitcoin network, especially at a global scale, is not being reduced.
Well, and the costs. You have to take into it's like pros and cons. You have to take in how is it beneficial, how is it destructive. I justify it in comparing the two dynamics, looking at what already exists today, how much things they're using to make it work, and then this new system, and then on top of that, right? Like we've talked about, it doesn't have to be Bitcoin. It can be these other newer currencies that are popping up that don't use any electricity really in comparison, like a fraction of what Bitcoin uses. But yeah, no, what really brings the value after we go through all that and compare the two, what really, really brings the value that you will never get with the centralized banking system is the deflationary aspect, because they want to be able to control the markets. The government is always about control. And so if they make it deflationary, a fiat, the dollar, then they can't control anymore. They can't manipulate the markets for what they want to tell the narrative that they want. And that's huge. That's a big no-no for them. They don't like that.
But how
So
does
you have
this,
that. You have the
but how does this remove that?
Bitcoin?
No, any of it. I agree with you, and I'm like the first one to be like smaller government. I'm all about it. But what I'm saying is like for the most part, those regulations prevent lots of bad things happening, and lots of good things still happen despite that. So is this sudden solution that now it being decentralized? It's like, well, who's going to run all these cryptocurrencies? The whales now run it. Now there's no intermediary. Now there's no representative of the people in theory. So it's like then you got what is his name? Vitalik Buterin is like the god of the planet, basically. This guy is God now. He's the money god. Like people jump on me when I say God. I don't mean God. Like, it's all relaxed. But like, it's like, as bad as they are and as bad as large government control is, it's like, it's like almost like the devil you know versus the devil you don't. It's like, okay, so now they're out. Now the entire world is in this free ball, and everybody, like, is that, I don't know, is that the better, so have we determined that that's just a better solution?
So how we, what you made a good point, which is like, who's going to regulate this? Who's going to make sure that things aren't being used for nefarious reasons?
Yeah.
So when you create a crypto, when you create a project, a blockchain idea, you're hard coding all of those rules and regulations and all that stuff into the code. Okay. And so you get it becomes a dumb AI, essentially. It's going to execute based on what you hard coded. It's going to execute that program. It's going to execute the variables that you put into that specific blockchain.
Yep.
So that's very important to remember. It self-regulates. It does that. It does all those mechanisms by itself. Now, let's say you want to upgrade, right? You want to make changes to it. Then it goes into that consensus issue. Bitcoin is a bad one to compare it to, because they tried to do that and to change it, and they couldn't do it. There are newer ones that have mechanisms that give everyone that owns a portion of that network the power to have a voice. And then they take a consensus based on a percentage of people. It's like a voting system. It's a normal voting system. And then with that creates consensus. It unlocks the code. And then people can see this. Like, you read a book, right? If I give you a book and you read the book from point A to point Z, the whole thing through, you then know, okay, this is how it works. It's there. It's visible. It's open source. Everybody can read that book. If there's a change, and because everybody can read that book, and when you're a part of the network, you have a copy of that book in your device, in your computer. So if a page gets changed, everyone in the network has to agree that, okay, we see the page that's changing here. We agree to it. So that's I believe to be the biggest variable that makes that difference of, like, if you continue with the centralized banking system, you don't have that access. You don't have that visual, that, see it clearly in front of you. It gets blocked by red tape, by all these things that stop us from being a part of it and seeing how it actually functions.
And the thing is that I don't know if this is the right, let me look up the definition of this word to make sure I'm using this properly. Okay. So, like, I don't know that this is the right word, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, the word I was going to use is existential. Like, the existential theory behind this, or like the human component, you and me, just like if you and I were sitting in a field, on mushrooms looking at the moon or something, or just being out in nature, I would be like, yes, this is the best thing, because look at this, it's this transparent structure or whatever else. But despite that, considering that we do live in this transactional based world where we have all of these structures in place that are, for the most part, there for very specific reasons, layered over time, that are not necessarily all like evil, like to the core. It's like, I don't know that we don't know what problems are going to come as a result of this. And I would almost wager that if we looked at the banking system when it was 10 years old, I would bet that many of these aspects were present in it then. And then over time, over 50 years, 100 years, whatever, new little offshoots created. And like, there was a couple places where we, in theory, went wrong, but it also opened up. It also opened up new possibilities. One of those things, for example, would be like the fractional reserve banking system, where it's like the bank doesn't have to hold as much as it lends out. And what that does is, like, instead of them having $1 million, now they have $8 million. But what that allows people to do is spend money that doesn't yet exist. So that explains a huge boom, that huge economic boom in factories, in skyscrapers, in real estate. It's like 95% of every single person that you know doesn't own their house. They own a mortgage. There's a note that they have to the bank. The bank owns the house, but yet we're all living in these houses and it's functioning. And for the most part, even though we're spending non-existent money that isn't really yet there, the structure seems to work. Now, some people get clipped along the way, and that's kind of like the toll of life. It's like not everybody can always win. Not everything can always be fair. But I also kind of disagree with the idea that, like, in order for somebody to win, someone else has to lose. I don't think capitalism really works that way. I know that you had mentioned that earlier, but I don't really think that that's true. I think that two people can win in a transaction. I don't know that it's always a give and take. But what I'm trying to say is that although I love the theory and I love the humanness of the thought process here, I believe that 10 years of crypto cannot be compared to 200 years of whatever, or 150 years of traditional banking structure. And I would wager that there's a lot of roadblocks along the way that we don't yet see that are going to force the structure to change and evolve as it comes along. In the same way that, however many years ago, you could just go to the bank with $50,000 of cash and just put it in the bank. And now you go to a bank with more than $10,000 in cash and you have to write a form and fill out a form. And there's a reason that happened, to be an intermediary to prevent more bad. And even though it's not ideal and it has this overlord in between, in theory, it does more good than bad. And I think that in a lot of ways that we don't know what we don't know in the crypto world. And I think that, call it 25 years from now, a lot of those roadblocks that would have been impossible for us to see, I think, are going to surface along the way, in the same way that if we looked at the traditional banking structure 50 years ago, we wouldn't have even thought that it would have come to this place. But for the vast majority of things, certainly not all, I think that, call it the government, call it structures, call it a formula that needs to be followed, I think that a lot of those things are actually good. It's just hard for us to see it because we didn't know what it was like before. And we didn't realize that the rawness of it caused that to happen. And one example would be like the seatbelt law. It's like having a seatbelt wasn't a law. And even though it seems like it's my freedom, I should have the right to die, it's like we all kind of like generally understand, like, yeah, it's probably a good idea to have a seatbelt law. And it's only a couple $100. And yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but like ultimately, it's like generally for your own good. You get jostled out of your thing, you could kill somebody else. It's like, I get it, but at the same time, like, it's kind of good. And I think that there's a lot of those things that we're going to see along the way. And that to me is like the unintentional hurdles that are going to come down the pipe that I don't think that we can see yet.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, there's still so much room for growth and innovation. Like I said, we're still innovating.
Yes.
This hasn't been solidified enough to go mainstream yet. We're actually I believe right before that chasm, right before that adoption into being used more regularly by the masses. And with that said, I think that, because we got to remember the whole industry was created out of a reaction to a market crash and people being upset enough to, whether it was a person or a group of people, come together and create this thing that it's not just it's not something that is really comparable to the current system. It was like, no, we're going to create a whole new way of doing transactions. It's like a huge leap forward it wasn't like this short progress to get to that point. It was a huge, like, 180 to what we currently have. And so, yes, in the beginning stages, this is what I believe. I believe in the next 3 to 4 years, we're going to have 3 different types of realities. Okay. You're going to have the maximalists that are 100% into crypto and they're completely detached themselves from any banking system structure. You're going to have the ones that are on the opposite end of the spectrum that are, no, why would I want to be in control of my money? This bank has $250,000 FDIC insurance. Anything happens, they can secure me. I'm good. And really stay in that, not taking their own responsibility. And then you're going to have the people in the middle, which I think is you. I think you're going to be like, all right, I don't think it's all evil. There's some good parts of this structure that currently exists. But I also like crypto. How can we incorporate those together and make them function together so that we're dotting the I's correctly and crossing the T's and not just allowing anybody to come in and distort it. I mean, I can see that middle ground also being a reality. So with that said, yeah, this is where we're at. We're right in the middle of it. We're right in the middle of this transition. And it's really about, where do you individually feel comfortable? Because I am on one side, on the side of the spectrum, where I'm like, I'm done with that system. And I want to be innovating, creating the new. But I also practically understand that we're not going to get there overnight.
Right.
There needs to be a transition. There needs to be this adoption of the current system, and like peeling back of those layers that makes us feel safe. You can't just, and that's actually one of the big hurdles that I've encountered in creating my course, is like, a lot of people are just teaching crypto and be like, come on in and make money overnight. And it's like, yeah, but they're bringing in this, like the mentality still. They're still bringing in the old system mentality, and then they get fucked.
Yep.
So lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And so it's really important to understand, hey, what's your intention with coming into this space right now? Like, why are you here? And then what's your relationship to money now? What's your relationship to your finances? And then seeing how crypto can benefit you and how it can be incorporated into your lifestyle.
Yeah. And what I think is great about it is that I do like that, even if for a brief moment, your average everyday person became part of the conversation. I do like the idea that it makes all of those people that are in control, theoretically, have to stay on their toes. I like the idea that technology first and kind of like fairness, whatever you want to call it, people are exercising a little bit of strength. I certainly like that. I'm pro the existence of this. And I like that. I like that shift in the power dynamic. And I think that it's ultimately good because it makes us better. And what it's going to do is it's going to light the fire under the people that are running the SWIFT system to say, maybe we can't charge this much for fees. Hey, maybe a wire can't cost $40 or whatever else. Or maybe we can't have it take 2 days. And I think that no matter what, the output is generally positive by anything that shakes it up. So I'm pro what's going on here. However, all I'll say to that, like the caveat is that I do believe that that a lot of people are going to lose, are going to suffer financially by making the wrong decisions. Though I don't think that's a reason for it not to exist. I hope that more people think about money, first of all, and I think that that's a good thing, but that people realize that you can't protect everything. Just because you take all the guns away doesn't mean that no one gets shot by a gun. It's like, you have to understand that there needs to be a balance of these things. So I'm for it. I just hope that more people stop thinking of it as like, it's a get rich quick, it's a lottery ticket. I'm going to buy a bag of donuts coin and all of a sudden I'm going to be a quadrillionaire.
Yes, I agree with that.
Hey, invest in blockchain structures that have this greater purpose that allows things to be built on top of them, and as a result everything's going to be better. I'm for that. I wish there wasn't so many snakes in the grass, so to speak, that are like, here's the
I have a theory for that. So like I said, I've been in the industry since 2012, and my first experience with that was actually Ripple. So you probably heard of Ripple, right?
Yeah,
XRP.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's talking about it. It's the end all be all, the banking coin. They spent a shit ton of money in marketing up front. And I'm seeing that happen now with some newer coins. Like, I've had people come into my DMs like, have you heard of Shibu? And I'm like, what the fuck is a Shibu?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a little Doge dog. It's compared to like it looks the same, so it must be worth the same.
Yep.
I laugh because I'm like, man, you know, it's right now what's happening. My theory is that you have these, I believe the institutions, the people that are trying to protect their system are coming in and trying to sucker people into these crappy coins
Yep.
and take their money and make a reason to crash this system by bad mouthing what's happening with those specific coins.
I think that, and isn't that such a lesson of life? And that's the other thing is like those people, like, if you have $1 billion, or if you run a hedge fund and you're moving hundreds of millions of dollars around during the day, it's like it would be very easy for you to produce, duplicate, create, market, brand, garbage coin,
overnight,
pump it, gas it, and then legally dump it without any repercussions. And that's kind of what I'm saying is like, as much as I'm for it, I just wish more people would understand that just because we think the big guys aren't in control, they're on it. You're telling me that the people at Goldman Sachs aren't doing that? It's like, come on.
So at least since 2014, like I said, with XRP was the first one.
Yeah.
But see, that's why it's so important. It's so important for us to individually do the work, discern, and not just fall to the. I mean, that was a lesson of 2020, in my opinion. 2020,
yes, 100%.
Either made you look at yourself and go, oh, I got to stop doing this programming move that I'm doing and just thinking the same way. And like, I got to discern, I got to research, I got to do the work, or I'm just going to be another sheep puppet doing what everybody else is doing.
Yep. No, and that's 100% right. And it's almost like, and what I don't want to sound like is like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth, where I say like, but we have to protect everyone. I'm not saying that that's the case. All I'm trying to do when I talk about this, and I love this conversation, is that all I'm trying to say is like your average everyday retail investor, like if a girl that I know mentions to me, like, I was just about to buy some Dogecoin, like, what do you think about that? I'm like, yo, you should be buying like stock, and you should be buying like a couple shares of Uber or something, or buy a couple shares of Boeing or something, you know? And that's the thing is like, I wish that those people weren't so easily taken advantage of. Now, I think it's easier to wear slippers than carpet the whole world. I say that all the time. It's a quote from Al Franken, and it's like, I get that. And my whole thing is all about just so you know, these are the potential issues. Not that I think that it should be destroyed, or that I think that it's evil inherently. I think that in a lot of ways it's good. I just wish that people looked at it in the right way, and that there weren't as many manipulators. And I think that because it's early, because it's young, it's fresh, it's hot, it's whatever, people don't see the truth. And what an interesting play on everything else that people don't see as the truth as well. It's like all the other lies. So it's like, here you have 90% of what you hear on a daily basis is complete lie. And then you have now this new thing, and it's like, oh, just so you know, guys, 90% of that is completely garbage as well. And that's the only thing that I try to do, is like, try to give my perspective on it, take it or leave it, and hopefully output some better or some good that people are like, all right, like Bobby Sauce's vote is invest in yourself in traditional assets, maybe the stock market. Not saying don't invest in crypto, just know what you're doing and do more research on it. And that's why I try to talk about it, because I like it. If I thought it was completely evil and whatever, I wouldn't even want to talk to you about it. I'd be like, yo, this guy's a snake. Like, don't talk to me.
I get that too. I get that every day. You know, it's funny. I love your perspective, because growing up, I've always been the optimist and always look at things with you know, flower goggles, and I'm just like, that's how I am. I can't help it. And I look at the benefits of it and look at the potential of things.
Yeah.
So I do like getting this perspective of all the, like, why is it bad? What are the, you know, the fears around it, the fears. But with that said, I always believe this. I always believe that if you teach people how to discern, if you help them through the process of gaining their power and taking control of what they want, and also helping them be aware of the different variables to look at in crypto, I think it'll give them more confidence than to just show the fears. And then the fears are like, just, you know, oh, that makes me afraid. It's unknown. I don't even want to look at it.
Yeah.
You know, so but like I said, like I still enjoy that side because I like this conversation because it really shows, you know, hey, there's all these things that exist, but you have the power within you
Yep.
to find out which ones are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that my perspective tends to lean more on the protective side of it, or like be careful versus not. Is because I feel like there's so many people gassing that I'm trying to balance the equilibrium. And the other thing too, which I'll say, is that I feel like in business and in life, I've realized the necessity that comes from prioritizing the things that we think about, do, educate ourselves on, and act on a daily basis, execute on. And
Mm-hmm.
though crypto is certainly in that spectrum, I look at it as like in the top 20% that creates you 80% of your results. And that top 20% of what we think about, what we do, what we invest in, where we go with our time, and what we learn about, do I think that your everyday average person should be spending some of that very limited time in diving into the crypto world versus doing any variety of other things that I think would provide them a much greater upside benefit. And that's why I find myself leaning that way so much, because I'm like, hey, you know, if somebody asks me about crypto and they have some student loans, they're renting their apartment, their car is leased, you know, they don't have that much money in the bank or whatever, I'm like, you know, buy a traditional US-based company that's existed for 100 years. That's a safer place for now. Don't distract yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like, don't distract yourself from something that's otherwise going to take you away from what I think is the magic of your life and what you could produce. Not that you shouldn't get there. I just think it's one of those things where it's like only a subset of people should really take the time to dive in there. And I would almost say that like the majority of people that are hearing the message probably don't fall in that category, which is why I tend to lean that way. And maybe that's just my audience. Whereas like with your audience, for example, your people they're ready for courses. They're ready to learn. They're ready to dive deep. They want to know. So for your audience, it's much more fertile ground where people are there looking for it. Whereas I feel like with mine, it's a much wider spectrum of people that may not be the best thing for them. So I like to present it, but say, hey, just so you know, I think that these things may be better. And that's kind of why I feel like I lean so far that way. Not that I think that it's bad all the way through, because I certainly think it's good. And the thought and the discussion, I think, is pro universe. I think that that's a good thing for all of us, for sure.
I love that you pointed that out because, you know, one thing that I do teach on in my course is to look at crypto more as a supplement and not the, you know, it's like dieting. Like we look at like, what's this thing that can help me, you know, in my life, but then they don't actually do the work. They just take that supplement thinking that it's going to solve things. And it's like, no, man, you got to go work out. You got to eat right. And then you supplement to stack on top of that. Crypto is the same thing.
Yep.
One of the first parts of my course is to teach people, first of all, the awareness. Like, what is your relationship with money? What is your relationship to finances? You know, are you doing something that brings you joy? Are you doing something you're passionate about? I believe, like you said, all those things are so important. They're so important to get to first, because practically speaking, let's take away crypto completely. If you're doing something you're passionate about and you're investing into yourself, into that passion, you will be successful, period.
Yep.
That's the truth.
Yep.
And even with all those things that you mentioned, having all those debts, all those things that exist, if you're doing something that you're passionate about, the internet has the resources for you to make a living off of it, period. That's a general truth.
For sure.
And then that's when I transition. Once the person gets that mindset and that awareness, then it's like, okay, how can crypto help you do that? How can crypto benefit your life to get you to the next level?
Yep.
And I believe that path that I took to teach that is good, because there are so many ways to make money in the space that a person coming in and not having that awareness gets lost, because they're like, which one do I get? Do I get this one? Do I get this one? Do I get this one? Dude, anything you can think of probably exists in the space.
Yep.
Any solution that you can think of probably already exists. The issue is you don't know what you want. You don't know what you love. You don't know what you want for yourself to then find that in the space. And so
Yep.
one does come before the other to
Yeah.
stop the person from like losing themselves and then losing money because they listen to their friend who is doing it for another reason.
I do love how your message is like, I don't know what the right word is, but I like how it's almost like it's like wholesome. It's almost beyond, it's like beyond crypto, you know? I like how you're putting it, you're framing it in like a supplemental life skill as opposed to just being a lotto ticket. And I think that that's probably my favorite part of your message overall, is because people that want to learn how to be more financially aware, that's big. That's big. I'm all for that. I think that's the greatest thing. So I love how you have just kind of like this wholesome, kind of almost like, and I hope I'm not using this word wrong, but like altruistic, like how this can really bring you up. And hey, look, just educate yourself, and these are the things that you can do, and maybe this is an opportunity for you to advance yourself in this new marketplace that exists. Kind of like when people were teaching people how to code apps 15 years ago or 10 years ago. It's like, you know, you've lived in this brick and mortar black and white world, and you don't want to cut lawns or repair cars, but you could build applications that allow people to thrive. You know, maybe that's the ecosystem that you could really win in. So I really like that wholesomeness of your message, because it's not just like, yo, Shiba coins going to the moon, guys. Like, let's all like hodl till we die. I like that. I like that aspect of your message, and I think that it's rare, which is why if anybody would make me be more soft and absorbent and sponge-like to the idea, it's certainly your delivery of the message versus a lot of the kind of like, I suppose you could call it like a traditional crypto bro, like hodl to the moon. Here's
There's the majority of the courses, I've done the market research, I'd say all of them, all of the courses are like that, because it's coming from people that have been in the industry for so long that they even use those words where they start using them, and people are like, what does that even mean? Like, what is he saying?
Yeah.
And so I'm definitely, I mean, I want to say it, I'm really the first to try to bridge that gap of being aware of that. You know, there are people, and by the way, there are people that are on that side completely, that are mentors and teachers that teach about abundance and teach about, you know, how one can reestablish a relationship with money and finances. But I'm bridging the two. I'm saying, hey, be aware of this, and then how can you practically use that in the space? And what's really cool, this is my vision, and I think why I was able to get to this point. But imagine a world where you're doing the thing that you're passionate about. Let's say you're play guitar or whatever, and you're teaching classes, and you want to create an ecosystem that people can pay you with guitar coin. And so you create in the space, in the crypto space, you create a guitar coin ecosystem for people now to go in there, buy it, and then use that to pay for lessons. And then it creates this whole thing that people don't have to use cash for. And you're being abundant around it because you built it a certain way to create that abundance.
Yeah.
So that's the idea. The idea is like, when I started creating the courses, like what can I do to bring more people into the space to innovate and to build what they want for themselves?
I like that. No, I like that a lot. And when I look at my annual, when I look at the annual P&L for my business and the amount of money that's lost to transaction fees, which is digits going here and then digits going there, I got to admit it is frustrating. It's like it can be thousands of dollars, $4,000, $5,000 a year, and I'm like, this is so stupid. But at the same time, it's like, so I'm all for the idea of these like ecosystems that at the very least can reduce or eliminate those middlemen, or at the very or even lower than that, make them more efficient so that those guys so those guys can't market gas everybody because they have such a share where they take 3 points on every credit card transaction now until forever. So I'm very pro that, and I think that that's kind of the free market doing its thing, where it's forcing those guys to maybe change their ways a little bit. So again, it's like, I can't reiterate enough. I think that this is positive overall, and I do, like I said, I do like your message, and I think that this conversation, I think, would be very valuable to me if I was not in this conversation with you, and even to me, it's valuable. So I think that people are going to get a lot from this. So kudos to you, and I enjoyed this conversation. Well, this was another hitter, man.
This was, I really enjoyed this one. This one, the last one got a little heated, but this one was like, was beautiful. This one, like, I think we got a good middle ground understanding of where we both stand with it. And I agree. I think people are going to really enjoy this one.
Yeah, no, I was like, you sure, bro? On the last one, I was like, I don't know, man.
I'm like, man, I'm getting like sweaty armpits with this conversation. What the fuck?
Yeah. No, it's like, see, that's the thing is just like my natural tendency when it comes to this, because it's like I'm so used to people like Scrooging everybody that I'm like I just naturally assume it's almost like guilty until proven innocent, because there's so much of that, and I'm just like, yo, are you trying to sell courses, bro? It's like, you do that. Go just sell courses to people, bro. But I do like that we got in, and I think this was more productive than a deep dive on aliens. Although next time
we'll put the two together. We're like crypto and aliens talk.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that.
For sure, man.
Well, dude, I really appreciate it, man. This was a good combo, good connection.
Yeah, man, absolutely, dude. Until next time, thanks so much for being here, brother.
Thank you everyone for watching.
All right, man. Talk to you soon. Yo, that was a really good conversation. I enjoyed that a lot. That was real cool. I'm really excited to post this one. I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from that. I think I'm really happy that I got to make my points and hear a fair and balanced kind of viewpoint, you know, from a person that really knows. And I'm very pleased with that. I think that was really good. I think that, you know, what I didn't hear one time in the conversation, which I got to give him a lot of credit for, was like, you just don't get it. You know, I always strongly disagree with that view, where it's just like, well, you just don't understand. So I love that didn't come up, and I strongly enjoyed that conversation. That was really, really cool. So thank you guys for being here. Much appreciated. Well, Maria. So thanks, guys, for being here. Thanks so much to the people that got the badges. I appreciate it. Sean 87 Callahan, Anna Maria, and Britt Seawolf. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate that. And please go follow me on YouTube if you don't already, youtube.com/Bobby Sausalito. And I'm going to make a video right now. So thanks for being here, guys. Appreciate you. I'm going to make a video. Talk to you soon.